Yo, man, Miss Rusty. It's Friday, and I am here today with a special guest. That special guest, I'm just gonna bring him out right here, right now. We have Jonathan Royle. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks, Rusty. How are you?
Oh, friggin' awesome, man. It's a day I got to go swimming, so I'm happy with that, and I get to be here in the meantime and talk with another hypnotist, which is nice. I don't know why I don't talk with more hypnotists, but um, it's good to be able to talk with a hypnotist. And so,
He's
but
saying that now. Viewers and listeners, he's saying that now, but he might not be by the end
yeah.
because I have somewhat different views on hypnosis than the majority.
Oh, okay. Well, let's start you out with a hot take right now. What's a hot take of yours about a different view of hypnosis?
Well, the bottom line is it's bullshit. It doesn't exist. There is actually more scientific evidence that hypnosis is not an altered state or anything special than there is evidence the other way. But you'll always get your so-called hypnotherapy trainers going, oh, they've done these brainwave patterns and therefore it's a distinct state. Bullshit. There's actually more evidence that proves that those so-called brainwave patterns you get the exact same ones if you just close your eyes, breathe deeply, and a short while later you will have exactly the same frigging brainwaves as if you had gone through this old hypnotic induction process. It's bollocks. Hypnosis does not exist except in the mind of the believer who comes to incorrectly believe that they've been hypnotized. It is nothing more than psychological and emotional manipulation.
So it's like a placebo effect, is what you're saying?
No, because placebo, most people don't understand what placebo is. It's a placebo trigger. Placebo effect is the outcome of what a placebo trigger is.
As opposed to.
So people talk about a pill, right? A sugar
Sure.
pill being a placebo effect. Well, it isn't. It isn't. A sugar pill, when they do placebo trials, is the placebo trigger. If somebody believes that to be a chemical compound tablet, that triggers off the psychological processes of belief and expectation. Then when they get a result similar to, better than, close to, or whatever to what the chemical compound does, that is the effect of their belief and expectations. That is the placebo effect. The tablet itself is what triggered that belief system and expectation.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So then it's a placebo trigger, is what you're saying then?
An element of it, yeah.
An element of it. Okay.
A large element of it is that the important seeming ritualistic process of so-called hypnosis is in terms of therapeutic hypnosis anyway, is definitely a placebo trigger to set off the belief and expectations of the client into believing that what's been done has been done clearly by this authority figure, the hypnotist, and why would they have me doing this important seeming ritualistic process unless it meant that is how you become hypnotized. And when they start to convince themselves that this feeling relaxed and whatnot is apparently what hypnosis is, they arguably, if hypnosis existed, it would be purely that flicking of a switch where they believe something special's going on. But the truth of the matter is, there's nothing anyone's ever done under so-called hypnosis that can't be done or achieved without going through the so-called ritual of hypnosis, which therefore in and of itself shows hypnosis isn't anything special. Because if it was, you'd be able to do things that you can't normally do, which you can't.
So is that part about like that you won't do anything?
It's bullshit.
Like if someone says it, like you can't get someone to go and like you know, if they don't normally do this, they're not going to go out and shoot somebody because you
Bullshit.
hypnotize
If
them.
you go if you go about it right, remember, hypnosis doesn't exist in the way most people think it does. It is nothing more than psychological and emotional manipulation, and certain other psychological ploys, such as the Pygmalion effect, also known as the Rothenthal effect, which is the idea that the authority figure, the therapist in a therapeutic context, or the stage hypnotist in that context, or it could be the cult leader in that context, that when if they deliver an instruction or a command with enough authority and conviction, that transmits a belief state to the patient or the stage participant or the cult member, that their imagination captures around and goes, wow, this person believes this, this must be true. It seems important. The authority figure's credible. I believe them. At which point, if they then start telling themselves internally that they believe these things, it triggers the Galatea effect, which people can research these at their own leisure, which is that more that they believe in this important seeming ritualistic process having an importance, the more likely it will have an importance for them, because it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Combine that in therapy, for example, with the Hawthorne effect, which is that people are more likely to stick to doing something if they're being held accountable and know they're being observed. Together with, yes, elements of the placebo effect has now kicked in based on the placebo trigger of that ritualistic process. It's not one thing, it's a whole bunch of frigging psychological principles, which in fact there's a 4-hour video at the top of one of my websites, ultimatehypnosiscourse.com. There's a 4-hour video. It's free. You don't have to even put your email address in. It's not one of those capture your email things. You just go to the website and you can watch the video where I break down all of the psychological principles. But so many of them there are that it takes 4 hours to go into them all. But the short version is that so-called hypnosis is nothing more than emotional and psychological manipulation. Now, that can be used with positive intent to help people overcome habits, addictions, fears, phobias, believe in themselves more, achieve peak performance, overcome panic attack. The list is as long as there is issues in the world. But the same principles of psychological manipulation can be used with nefarious intent by those that have the intent of manipulating people to think a certain way, vote for a certain political party, believe in a certain religion, join a cult, or the massive extremes. Yes, you can manipulate somebody through emotional and psychological means to do things that would normally contradict their morals and values. 99% of hypnotherapists say you can't. Well, it's bullshit. They either saying that because A, they've been brainwashed to believe it by the person who taught them. So because their teacher told them it can't be done, clearly it can't be done, apparently, which begs the question why the CIA and American government wasted so much bloody money after the war running MK Ultra trauma-based mind control experiments involving hypnosis and actually getting results and using those techniques to this day. All very odd, but they seem to ignore things like that. Or they do know, but they think that if they admitted the truth, that would scare off clients. Well, I actually think it's the opposite. If you're completely honest with clients that, yes, these techniques can be used for nefarious and unethical means, that it shows that you actually know more about the bloody subject than 99% of therapists out there, and done right, it will actually get you more clients.
Yeah, I tell people that, like, you know, like I say, like, you know MK Ultra, you know how well that shit worked. Like, it fucking worked. Okay, that's the fucking nefarious way to do it. Think about if you flip that switch and you make that and you do it in a good way. Think about how well that's going to work for you. Like, these people didn't know that. Yeah,
you can use these techniques as most definitely psychological, emotional manipulation. Call it hypnosis. Call it what that bloody hell label you want to give it, to get people to kill, to be mind-controlled assassins. It's been done. And, you know, in recent years, it's been duplicated in England by Derren Brown, the stage mentalist, in a television show called The Assassin. In America, on, I think it was the Fox Network or Discovery Channel, actually, I think. My friend and colleague, Tom Silver, did a show called, it was either Brainwashed to Kill or Hypnotized to Kill. You can find these, though, if you search Google, you can find them on Vimeo and YouTube to watch. And these weren't paid actors. It was a recreation to see if it was possible. And yes, you definitely can. I mean, I've done TV shows myself in England where I've hypnotized people, and I'm using that word for ease. I've emotionally, otherwise I'm going to say emotionally and psychologically manipulated them and distorted their conscious mind with psychological principles. Rather than saying that every time, I'll say hypnotized, even though it doesn't exist, to reveal to me their confidential computer passwords and banking PIN codes and stuff. And afterwards, they had no recollection of giving me this information when they were interviewed by the TV station. We did stuff to prove that you can use it nefariously. And, well, the simple fact is you can. When you realise that it's just emotional and psychological manipulation taken to the nth degree, and you realise, I mean, we mentioned MK Ultra, but in more recent years, okay, an offshoot of MK Ultra was the formation, well, they worked in conjunction on MK Ultra, but in England, a thing called the Tavistock Hospital, as it was when MK Ultra experiments were being done. Well, that morphed in later years to be renamed to the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations, which is what it's still called to this day. And it shares the same building in London on a back street as the British Psychological Society, which psychologists and psychiatrists are members of, and in England, it's many of their members that are responsible for diagnosing via DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Illness and Disease, diagnosing and prescribing very lucrative drugs to people for apparent psychological conditions that are just labels that have been made up by a committee who sit together on a board. And if you compare DSM-5 to DSM-4, they've altered the meanings of different things. They vote on it. It's bullshit. Most mental illness is made up to, that's not to say that people don't suffer imbalances. It's to say that they give it labels and make it seem worse than it is so they can make money from drugs. Now, that's in the same building as the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations. Coincidence? I think not. The Tavistock Institute, yeah, Tavistock Institute of Human Relations then as an offshoot, and incidentally on their own website, and they're government linked, on their own website, people can go and see they almost, in a roundabout way, they admit what they're up to. They say, you know, we do cutting edge psychological research in how to influence behavior for marketing campaigns. And yeah, well, but it can also be used for politics, for, you know, and an offshoot of it is that there's a thing called the Behavioural Insights Team, BIT, that's got an office near Westminster where the Houses of Parliament are. And they are affectionately dubbed in the British media and sometimes the world media, if you do a Google search, as the nudge unit, because their job is to nudge people's opinions, behaviours, thoughts and reactions in favour of what the powers that be, the present government, want. So can you make people say and do things that contradict their morals and values? Yes, you most certainly can if you use the right techniques in the right manner for a long enough period of time, then virtually anything is possible.
So do you think that's mainly by, you know, not like subliminal, is it like more like subliminal stuff constantly, do you think? Or, you know, is it, you know,
it's elements of it. It's element
programming.
It's just another label. NLP was just a name that Richard Bandler came up with so that he could use so-called hypnotic style techniques in states of America where you weren't allowed to use so-called hypnotic techniques in therapy unless you had certain licenses. He just rebranded it and renamed it and turned it into a bit of a multi-level marketing cult. You can give it fancy names. At the end of the day, psychological manipulation is psychological manipulation. Whether you call it hypnotherapy, NLP, life coaching, Tibetan mind control, Scientology, whatever, they all work when they work for the same underlying psychological principles, which are the ones that I covered briefly before, but go into depth on at that Ultimate Hypnosis course website. In terms of some of it's subliminal, yeah. Most of it's repetition, because there's so many things going on in life. We're not consciously aware of more than, I think the old saying is 7 bits of information at once maximum, plus or minus 2, meaning that it's 5, 7, or 9, depending on the moment, what it is, where it's coming from. And yet there's way more than that bits of information. They're not consciously being processed long. So arguably, so-called subliminal stuff that's going in unconscious, subconscious, without being filtered properly by the critical faculty, analytical area, or executive function, whichever you want to call it, they're all basically the same thing, is happening all the time. It's just that when you're aware of that fact and you can focus people's attention on those, on a specific set of 5, 7, or 9 things, so they're consciously overloaded and the critical faculty, analytical area, executive function, or whatever is bypassed, then you can slip in your commands, instructions, conditioning, programming, religious message, political message, whatever may be relevant. And yeah, that's massively, I mean, recent years, a company called Cambridge Analytica, which was set up by SCL, I think, Strategic Communications Labs, or Strategic Communications Limited. You can check that out on my friend's website, Neil Saunders Mind Control.co.uk. He's done a lot of research on them. They're classed as a military grade psychological warfare weapon with the British government. And it's not conspiracy theory, it's openly known. There's Netflix documentaries on Cambridge Analytica because they've been exposed as they were involved in influencing the British and European Brexit vote, and also in the Trump campaign and in various other political campaigns around the world. They've been, by using psychological warfare techniques, which one of their main ones was videos and memes, you know, a visual image, because the unconscious works in subconscious, unconscious, call it what you will, works in abstract images. So the image captures the attention. Oh, let's look at that. And because there's a certain amount of bandwidth being used on this image of the brain focused on it, the words that they put underneath, which may or may not be true, filter in more easily without resistance and without proper analytical vetting, as it were.
These stupid fucking memes are the best way to get into, not the best way, one of the best ways to get into someone's head. The information you're trying to.
It's a technique. The memes and videos they use. And this sounds a bit conspiracy theory, but it is covered in the documentaries you can find on Netflix. So you'll see that it isn't. And if you check out my friend's blog, Neil Saunders, that's NeilSanders, Neil Saunders, mindcontrol.co.uk. It's got a big thing on Cambridge Analytica, and it gives you stuff you can check out yourself. But to further illustrate that it's not a theory, when Elon Musk took over Twitter, he has started on his own account releasing what he calls the Twitter files, which is, now that he's got access to it, he started publishing the proof that the algorithms of Twitter were, during certain political campaigns, used to manipulate what people saw, to manipulate their opinion for voting, which was all part of Cambridge Analytica's remit to psychologically manipulate and persuade and influence the mass populace. So yeah, very, very powerful tool. So powerful. I'm not sure what the battalion is called of the American Army, although I do know another podcast host in the past said to me, yeah, we have the same thing here in America. But in England, there is what they've set up what they call the 77th Battalion, which if you Google search it, you'll find the British Army's got their own website recruiting people for the 77th Battalion, where it blatantly tells you on the website their specialist area is psychological warfare, aka psychological operations, Psy-Ops for short, and that this is ultimately how wars are truly played out and won these days.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of people that I've encountered that also think that that this stuff just maybe stopped in the 1970s or 1980s, and then just people, the government or whomever is in charge of what we're seeing and experiencing, like it just stopped and they're not doing it anymore. But I mean, now there's, we have all our smart devices, which are,
it's going on more than ever.
weaponry.
It's easier than ever for them. It is.
And I mean, we're so fucking into it already. And then how easy is it? Just you get, like you're saying, with a meme or something, or it's real easy. I mean, if we're that into looking at our phone or
most people are addicted to social media, one or other. Some people are Twitter people, some are Facebook, some are Instagram, some are TikTok. There's so many different platforms. But the point is that all of them can be used to influence, persuade, and control. As long as you can get your message in front of the person's face, then you can influence, persuade, and control. And the powers that be either have budgets galore to be able to do this and pay for paid placement of things, or have the power to be involved in influencing the algorithms anyway. There are some that would suggest, or do suggest, that Facebook was never set up in the way that the story and narrative goes, and that actually the CIA were or are behind it, and that its main aim was to get people addicted to the thing that Facebook really cemented much more better than MySpace ever did, and that is an addiction to social media, because they knew that the power of then being able to get that message, that program out to people.
Yeah.
There was a time when it was done through the television screen, but now with so many TV shows and channels, there's too many different stations and programs. That would become massively cost prohibitive. It's far more cost effective to centralize it through a channel of the one channel is Facebook or the one channel is TikTok, as opposed to 600 or whatever many different TV stations there.
Five or six things maybe, opposed to hundreds or thousands of different ones and people aren't watching these shows. They're not going back to the same show every time, multiple times a day, and then spending however fucking long. That they're not going in to take a shit, and they're not fucking watching.
No, people binge watch now, so they'll wait till the entire series is there that's recorded, then they can watch it all in a night or two. Whereas there was a time that people would tune in every week for the 6 or 8 weeks, so they knew they'd had the repetition over 6 to 8 weeks running their advert during that program. Okay. For example, that's for a product. It could be a political campaign. It could be anything these days with social media. Whereas now, people watch them all in one night. So yeah, they might see the advert 8 times between the program, although they can fast forward through them when it's been recorded quite often. So it's not as effective. Whereas with social media, people can be forced to see things unless you pay for the no adverts version, But you can still be forced to kind of see things. They can get it in front of you. It's far more effective for them. And also that way they know, because you're checking your social media every day to see if your photograph got likes or if you've had comments, that you're going to see something else pop up the next day. So they've got that repetition back that used to be possible through weekly television scheduling or people reading the daily newspapers, the less and less do now, less and less get physical ones. Where is it happening? They get the repetition through social media.
And then the marketing or whatever, or the powers that be that run it are able to, with the likes, comments, and shares, how much traction each thing's getting to know, to put more more into that specific thing, and that because they're going to interact with it more, and more people will interact with it
Exactly.
more
They've
frequently.
got very complex they can work out, and from that they can predict people's behavior, which is what Cambridge Analytica, if you look into it, the documentaries, that's what that was all about. It's what they do. They can predict from past behaviors and habits what the person's likely to do in the future if things remain as they are. And therefore, they can also work out what pushes that person's emotional buttons, so that they can purposely present them with propaganda, which is the name of a book written by somebody called Edward Bernays, who was the founder, arguably, of brainwashing techniques. Edward Bernays' book, Propaganda. To make people feel angry, for example, so that then they might speak out and start saying things that would upset some other people. So they'll cause arguments and division, because they want people to argue and be divided. Because while people are in that state of argument, non-agreement, it's akin to confusion and disorientation, which means bandwidth of the brain's being used up, which means the critical faculty, analytical area, executive function is bypassed. And again, the commands or the messages
pop it right
can
in,
get right through. So, that's why if us voting actually carried any weight whatsoever, they wouldn't allow us to do it.
Yep.
It's to give us the illusion of choice. It doesn't matter who gets in. Sooner or later, even the best intentioned MPs or politicians, history shows, either end up dead if they continue to disagree with what the powers that be want, or they don't deliver on what they promised. And that's either because A, they were totally dishonest, or B, they started with the best of intentions, and then once they got into power, they realized they're not actually in the position of power they thought they were. Dark figures with far more money, far more influence and control behind them and higher up tell them what to do.
They're just kind of puppets in a sense. I mean, and it's hard for a lot of people to get that too. I feel like that's something that's a kind of a foreign concept to, like, they I don't know why they don't.
Because it could be scary, the idea that this is going on. I mean, there's another thing. There was another CIA project in the 60s into 70s officially, called Operation or Project Mockingbird. Operation Mockingbird, Project Mockingbird. I always get the buggers mixed up. Anyway, Mockingbird, which was basically manipulating the media and the messages that went out through newspapers and TV and radio and whatnot. Apparently that officially ended in the late 60s, early 70s. I say apparently because my personal first-hand experience, certainly of the British media, which I have extensive experience of, that people can learn about at circusofthemind.net, to the degree where I'm currently have litigation running for privacy intrusion against me by Rupert Murdoch, the media mogul's media empire. The so-called phone hacking cases that are going on. Well, I filed a case against him on the 30th of September last year in my birth name, Alex Smith. So if anyone searches Alex Smith versus NGN, Newsgroup newspapers, that's me. And because of it, I can't go into too much depth verbally, but on my website, circusofthemind.net, there's legal documents that show my involvement with the media and seeing things from the inside that most people don't get to see. And it is my conclusion, based on my knowledge and experience of the past several decades, that the media, the vast majority of the media, whether television, radio, newspapers or magazines, if they're what are known as the legacy media, the mainstream media, they have little, if any, but very little, if any, regard for the truth, reality and facts. It's all about manipulation and control. There's an old saying in the media: if it bleeds, it leads. Meaning the more horrific, traumatic, or distressing or outrageous a storyline can be, or headline, the more likely it is to go prominently on the front page and be big inside. It's not about spreading genuine news and facts. It's about instilling a sense of fear into the mass populace, false evidence appearing real, false evidence against reality. So that instead of people being able to face everything in life and rise, they end up fearing everything and running. Fight and flight, they get stuck in the middle, freeze like the rabbit in the headlights, because the brain's being occupied with all this bullshit and division and this is going on in the world and it means this and this could happen. And it's all designed that way to keep people in this permanent state of what the fuck's going on.
Yeah, and then they act in their, then the flight or flight mode the whole time. They end up acting stupid, I guess is a scientific way to put it. They act stupid, but then at the same time, it's so easy just to go and it's as if their brain is at capacity, like you were saying, and it's just anything that they slip in there, they're taking like it's fucking gospel, and just.
And this is every area of your life. I mean, literally every area. I mean, if you as a listeners go on my YouTube channel, Celebrity Hypnotist, click on where it says playlists. There's a playlist called Extreme Danger, Extreme Hypnosis, subtitled It's Time for the Sleepwalking Zombies to Wake Up, which is appropriately the name of my 2019 1 hour and 50-minute long documentary that I made, exposing how we are all hypnotized, aka emotionally and psychologically manipulated, persuaded, and influenced from all areas of our daily life, from cradle through to the grave. And I give examples of politics, education system, the workplace, the media, you name it. I cover all the areas of life and highlight how we are so easily influenced in those areas, so that the things come together as a whole, because they all look like separate areas of life, but when it comes down to it, the media put out the narrative that the powers that be want. The so-called people that are voted in do what the powers that be tell them to do ultimately. The indoctrination system, most people think of it as the education system, train you to learn, memorize what the authority figure says as being correct, and then to repeat what the authority figures told you. So that what you're really learning is to accept what authority figures say, to accept it and to repeat it, and therefore not analyze and independently research things for yourself, thus making you easier. Yeah,
critical thinking fucking gone.
Yeah,
and I mean, with the education system, at least in the United States, one of the big backers of it was the Rockefeller family, and so. To like fully indoctrinate someone as far as that, to become, a good worker, not question shit, is, 8 hours a day and, 12 to 14 years, which is how long, you're in school every day, and then how long until you're out of school, and then you're set up to be a great worker bee for
you've been conditioned, you've been brainwashed, you've been indoctrinated into that belief system and that expectation. And as I say, in that documentary, I show actual visual proof of examples from life to make it easier for people to spot, and also provide them with suggestions on, look, when you are now aware of this, when you see it happening, take a step back. Don't immediately accept what any authority figure says. It may well be true. It may well be in your best interest a lot of the time, but there's going to be times when it isn't. And the only way to tell the difference is to every time analyze, independently research, take a step back, you know?
Yeah, it's I mean, especially with what's gone on, even just going back the last whatever 3-4 years. I mean, just how much of that has just been so much. This authority figure said it. Fuck. It's true. It's true. Let's just. I mean, not even question it. Just no question whatsoever. No stopping. When you think like you would at least stop and think about it. Whatever you end up doing, whatever is fine. But like
authority figures, fear, ramped up apparently through respectable media that wouldn't lie to you, my ass.
Right. Yeah, like that.
What if they wouldn't lie to you and do dishonest things? Why are so much of the and other stuff going on now in Australia and America as well, with various court cases and allegations against people like Rupert Murdoch's media empires being accused of not just things like phone hacking and unlawful information gathering, but also apparently of just blatantly making things up, fabricating them, libel, defamation, and stuff. So, you know, if they've done those things, which they clearly have in the past because they pay people off, and other people are still making similar allegations, then, you know, if they're prepared to do that, what else are they prepared to do? You know what I mean? Or be dishonest about.
So if someone, you know, hasn't been questioning anything, or, you know, they listen to this show, I mean, what's the first thing they got to do to get to a point?
There's two answers to that. The flippant and cheeky one is go directly to Amazon and type in Extreme Danger, Extreme Hypnosis by Jonathan Royle and buy the nearly 500-page encyclopedic book of the same name as my documentary that expands on all the subjects. And I mean, we even go much deeper down the rabbit holes, how it all interconnects globally with involvement in trauma-based mind control, sexual abuse, trafficking of children, and it's a fucking really deep rabbit hole if you start going down it. Some of the rabbit hole is complete and utter nonsense. There are complete nutters in the conspiracy theory truther community. I'm afraid there are some who just believe things from the apparent authority figure who's told them in the truth community that it's true. Ironically, that they're being part of that, passing on bullshit because they just believe without independently researching. The whole point should be don't believe anything without first independently researching it yourself from multiple different sources. But some people seem to forget that element of it. So that'd be a slightly flippant, but also true answer. But the second one will be quite simply, you know, each and every person watching and listening to this at some point in their life, and I know hindsight's a wonderful thing, but at some point, many points, you will have had experiences where you, after the event, have gone, if only I'd listened to my gut. I just, something, you know, about that didn't seem right at the time, and then it went the way that I feared. I should have listened to myself, to my instincts in that moment. And because you've lived those experiences before, and you will have multiple occasions in your life where that's happened, the key thing is to start to trust yourself and your gut instincts. You've got a kind of mind, I'm going to call it brain in your head.
Yeah.
But it's been shown that you've got a kind of brain in your heart that actually sends more information to your brain than the other direction. And there are studies that people talk about the gut mind, that actually you have a kind of brain when you got, so it's not just a saying, you know, trust your gut. It is a genuine sort of thing. And you've just got to start to trust yourself. And the more you start to trust yourself and listen to your body telling you things. I can't put it into words, but if you look back on the experiences you've had in life where you've gone, I knew at the time something wasn't right.
Yep.
What that felt like to you, because I can't describe what that feeling is. What that felt like to you is what you're going to start looking out for. And if you start getting that feeling of something's not quite right, or actually that is the best option, go with it. Are you going to be right every single time? No. Am I saying trust yourself to the point of gambling your life savings on something? Most certainly bloody no. Apply some common sense here. But the more you, with things where there's relatively no risk, start to learn to trust yourself, the more you will become even more aware of your own abilities to see through the crap, and the more clear things will become to you, and the more it'll become blindly obvious to you that people out there are trying to emotionally and psychologically influence, control, and persuade you all the time, sometimes with your best interest at heart, but often with their interest more at heart.
Well, are you talking like peers as well? Like peers or, people that are in your life in a smaller circle as well? Or is that?
I'm not saying don't trust anybody, because that would make you walk around like some kind of paranoid lunatic. But question everything.
So, okay. So, yeah, I mean, it's really easy just to, I mean, if you saw it on TV, or I saw it on
basically apply conscious thought to things, analyze things, think them through before you make decisions. Too many people are walking around like a sleepwalking zombie, distracted by the interference that's purposely being pumped out to keep their brain occupied. Just take a step back. When your phone bleeps, you don't need to pick it up straight away to see, is that an extra like on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok? Actually, what you could do is turn off the sound so you don't, lo and behold, so you don't get noisy notifications every 5 minutes, and take control of the situation and say, okay, I'll check my social media in 2 hours' time.
Yeah, like mine is all I have. Everything is turned off. All the notifications are turned off. I have like everybody and everything, like any page, any person, everything is turned off. I like the only thing I see, like, I don't get notifications for these, is there's like I have my buddy has a Mike Judge page that has like Beavis and Butthead stuff, King of the Hill, Office Space, all that stuff, and then what's available for sale near me, because I like to resell things. And I mean that's it. The rest of it, I'll go on every once in a while, and like, but I'm not seeing shit. I'm not sitting in.
You choose when you go on. That's the key.
Yeah.
And if you do that, then you're taking control. And the more you are taking control of when you do things, what you choose to do, when you choose to do it, what you choose to see, what you are feeding the garden of your mind, the less weeds, you could metaphorically say, the less bullshit, the less lies, the less fear you're going to be allowing to get in there, whether it's consciously or subliminally. Because, it could be stuff that just happens to be in the background while you're looking at the page. But if you, at least you're limiting that. If you go, look, I'm going to check my emails or my Facebook messages, morning, lunchtime, one time at the evening.
Yeah,
you'll save a whole bunch of time that you normally waste looking at your phone every time it goes beep, and you'll remove those instances of. You'll control your brain to not be that bothered. In other words, you put up a picture and you've got so conditioned to, when it bleeps, let's have a look. Oh, somebody's liked it. And they put a nice comment. That's brilliant. It makes you feel good. Chemical release, dopamine and serotonin and all that. Or they put a nasty comment. I disagree with them. Angry. It's all the confusion and disorientation thing. Again, take a step back. Rather than getting disturbed every 5 minutes or then 20 minutes later, 10 minutes later by these notifications that could ruin your day if it's a negative one, choose I'm only going to do it at this time. You look then. There may have been loads of comments. There may have been none. There might be ones that anger you. There might be ones that make you happy. More likely to be a combination of the two, which balances it out so you don't feel as bad. But the point is you're living more in the moment where you are controlling your destiny, reality, and what you're thinking and what you're feeding it.
Yeah, and I mean, and with, I mean, some of it, like, you don't know, I don't know, if you're someone that has a lot of followers or something like that, you also are having people that you don't know, and you don't even know if they're real people or if they're someone else who has, you know, not your best interest at heart to start saying shit. And yeah, you're getting this, you know, the old Pavlovian response of, you know, the little ding, the bell goes, and oh, I gotta check the, oh shit, yeah, you know, you're in you're like you're saying, you're in that everything like just sort of a panic mode, and then anything goes in is just gonna, you know, get right in your head, right in your subconscious, and then with,
they are trying to fill your head with, I say, shit. And from birth up until around the teenage years, puberty, before the executive function starts working, or some call it the critical faculty analytical area, but we're like sponges growing up, and everything goes in. There is no filter, as it were. So that's why things start from such an early age. And then on top of that, as well as this programming that's purposely thrust upon us, which I cover in the Extreme Danger documentary on the Celebrity Hypnotist YouTube channel, we have the unexpected traumas of growing up. And I don't necessarily mean, you know, some people, trauma means, oh, you mean people who are sexually abused or bullied or whatever. Of course, that is traumatic. That's the big end of the scale. But every human being growing up goes through multiple dozens, if not hundreds, of what I call mini traumas. Now, I call them mini traumas not to undermine the impact that they have on people. It's just a way to refer to them, really, because from an adult perspective, they are mini. So if I was to say to you that being a 3-year-old, having fallen onto a balloon at a party and it bursting, could contribute to them being a cocaine addict in later life as an adult, most people would probably go, what the fuck are you talking about, Jonathan Royle? You've lost the plot there. But let's just think a moment. As a child, what to us as adults is purely imaginary, to them is reality in the moment, as real can be. And to that 3-year-old at that birthday party, it wasn't a blue balloon that just got burst. They picked up that balloon and they decided it had turned into, I don't know, maybe a magical fairy kingdom castle full of their little fairy friends. So when that balloon popped, whilst to us as an adult, that's the balloon popping, it's not particularly traumatic. In that moment, to that child, the reality is their magical fairy kingdom's just been destroyed and all the little fairies killed. That's as traumatic to that 3-year-old in that moment as it would be to us as an adult losing a loved one or family member in a car crash. Now, when you think of it that way and realise that therefore that trauma is severe trauma, not just a balloon popping, that gets frozen in time because there's nothing to filter it, process it properly because they're experiencing it as a 3-year-old, that goes into the unconscious, subconscious, or as I like to call it, the personal desktop computer, and gets frozen in time and is there. And there's loads of these types of incidents happen before the critical faculty analytical area, executive function starts working at around teenage years, puberty, that are then locked in there, and all that negative shit is in there. But there's part of your brain that goes, I shouldn't feel this way, but doesn't understand why, because you're now thinking as an adult, but doesn't understand that those things are locked in there, because it's locked in there as the 3-year-old experienced it, or the 4-year-old, or whatever, and it's never been resolved. So, shameless plug, in my most recent book, and my best book by far, Shitnosis, helping you get over the shit in your life and get your shit together, I use the metaphor of they filled your head with shit and you've had those traumas and shit as you're growing up that you're not even consciously aware of. And I go through processes, and they are just important seeming ritualistic processes to ultimately distract the unconscious, the analytical critical faculty, to allow you to gain access to your own head engineer, metaphorically, in the control room of your mind, your personal desktop computer. So you can go in and remove, delete, and override any negative thoughts, feelings, energies, and emotions or connections that have been frozen in time in the upbringing of those mini traumas, as I called them, so that then they're not holding you back. It's like letting go of all that self-blame, shame, guilt, and regret. All those fears, frustrations, failures, angers, anguish, anxiety, resentment, regret, remorse, all of that's let go of through forgiveness of yourself and others, acceptance, realization, and release, together with an element of reprogramming and reframing things in the more adult perspective, so we can metaphorically let the inner child heal and grow up, so we can become who we were truly meant to be and be free to move forward without any emotional imbalances, which means then we can more easily say goodbye to any habits, addictions, fears, or phobias we have, because, as I explain in Shitnosis, the first chapter asks the question, are you emotionally constipated? And by that I mean, is there an imbalance? Because if you've got a habit, addiction, fear, or phobia, if you suffer from panic attacks, anxiety, depression, or any issue, the only way you can be is because something's out of balance or not right that allows that to occur. Which is why when people try on their own to perhaps quit smoking or quit taking cocaine, they might do for months, sometimes maybe even years, but sooner or later they either relapse, go back to it, or symptom substitution occurs, which means that because they're not dealt with the underlying negative shit that was triggering the feelings that made them go and take the cocaine or drink too much or smoke or have the panic attack, that it will manifest in some other way. It's like the mind trying to tell the body, wake up, you need to do something. Well, that something is you need to heal the metaphoric inner child, clean up the computer memory banks of your personal desktop computer, and metaphorically install mental antivirus software for the brain, which is what the important seeming ritualistic processes are in this book. Some will call them hypnosis. I just say they are emotional influence techniques to occupy your conscious mind with positive intent so that you can distract the critical faculty, analytical area, or executive function. So you can pop in and have a spring clean and get rid of the shit and install good positive programs. So rather than hearing the little imposter syndrome voice in your head going, you're not good enough, or no, you're going to fuck up this, or whatever it may be, or now's the time to be panicky or anxious, you can have the little voice end up saying to you, it's okay, you've got this one. You can remain calm, relaxed, and confident. You're worth it. It's about running the right programs, taking control.
And I feel like with a lot of people who come into me with something like, with weight loss, or they're, sometimes like PTSD or something of that effect, or even stopping smoking cigarettes. I mean, like, I like doing the desensitization, especially with PTSD or something, but then they think it's some event that happened to them maybe 5 years ago, but then they go back and then they find out there's something when they were, 3 years old, like you were saying, that just like they had no clue about that existed in their head, that's been fucking them up for the whole time. And then just being able to go and confront that and, tell the inner child of yours, it's so okay. Like, it's okay. This is okay. You don't have that, that interrupt of, no, it's not fucking not, something's not. Now you can tell it as an adult, tell the inner child of yours, like, it's okay, fucking go, move forward. It was a big deal then, but you know what? Now it's not a big deal. And without telling yourself that, you don't fucking know. It's just in that, you know, 90, I think it's 92% of all the stuff we do is in our, you know, subconsciously or unconsciously or whatever.
Mhm. Yeah,
you know.
so the autopilot, so to speak.
Yeah, the autopilot. And yeah, it's just, you don't know why, you're just doing it. And with your book, I mean, I think that could just be able
It's not
to,
just a book. I mean, it is a book, but it's not just words on the page, is what I mean. There's loads of these things in QR codes, so that people can then just get their device and scan it. And instead of having to learn, because yeah, it's there in black and white, the different processes, the different placebo triggers to start the process of expectation and belief with positive intent for them. But some people learn better by visual demonstration. So those QR codes, anything that's taught in the book also has a video where I demonstrate it and talk people through. So it's kind of like having me there in the room with them as a therapist, except instead of paying $500 an hour, it cost them 17 United States dollars for the book off Amazon. That's it, you know.
that seems like
kind of make it accessible to people.
I like that. So I haven't even started to scratch the surface with a lot of this. We haven't even gotten to stage hypnosis yet. And
do you know, I can sum it all up, and this isn't being flippant, it's just this sums it up, whether it's stage hypnosis, hypnotherapy to help people in their life, or it's using it positively or negatively as emotional, psychological influence, manipulation, control, which, as I say, is covered in the documentary Extreme Danger, Extreme Hypnosis. The key is, and that's where I was going, the emotional, are you emotionally constipated? The first chapter, it goes into what I call Royle's hierarchy of emotional needs. And that is that it's my experience and observation, every human being, in order to be able to function at peak performance without negative habits, addictions, fears, or phobias, or things that, without the negative shit, they need to feel, and feelings are purely illusionary. They are a thought process. They're different for everybody. It's not a tangible thing, but they need to feel, in whatever way is right for them, loved, wanted, needed, appreciated, cared for, cherished, and valued. Now, they sound very similar, but if you get a thesaurus and check out those words, loved, wanted, needed, appreciated, cared for, cherished, and valued, they're all very different, in fact, and they relate to different things. And if there's any there's been any lacking or imbalance in any of them, it could be just one of them. But if one of them is lower than the others, then the scale's out of balance. It might be two. It could be all seven, but they're all at different levels. But for most people, it's just going to be one, two, or three of them. It doesn't matter if there's any imbalance or lacking in any of them. It will have a negative impact on that person's self-image, self-esteem, self-confidence, and self-control, aka willpower. And if there's any negative impact on them, in turn, it has a negative impact on that person's self-worth, self-love, self-respect, and positive selfishness, namely being able to look after themselves before they're able best to, help others. And if there's any negative impact on any of them, it will ultimately impact on their sense of self, their self-identity, and they will feel like there's something missing from them. Some people want to fill that with food. Some people want to fill that with God and religion. Some people try and fill that gap with, drowning it out with alcohol, others put up a smoke screen. They're all metaphors, but it's kind of what's going on because something underneath doesn't feel quite right. So it manifests as an issue. So it could just be that they, little things growing up, a teacher said they weren't good enough or something. And those frozen in time trauma moments go in, cause an imbalance on the emotional things, and it has that negative impact on the other things. And when you grow up, because that negative stuff's still running in the background, boom, it manifests as an addiction or a phobia or whatever. So to reverse that, it is both as difficult and as easy as making the person feel loved, wanted, needed, appreciated, cared for, cherished, and valued fully, so that in turn, it makes them feel fully self-confident, their self-image, self-esteem, and self-control balances out, so that in turn, their self-love, self-worth, self-respect, and positive selfishness balances out. So in turn, they feel metaphorically whole again, complete. Their sense of self, their self-identity is one where they feel good about themselves, at which point any need or desire, consciously or unconsciously, for drug of choice or phobia reaction of choice or trauma not yet released just melts away. Often in what seems miraculously short spaces of time, because it's actually not as complicated as some people want to make it seem. And most of those people that want to make it seem more difficult and complicated are those that are either selling expensive course after expensive course, like multi-level marketing plan, which a lot of
therapists,
a lot of therapists and self-help community do. You know, people will bring out self-help book after self-help book. If the first self-help book they brought out was any good, why would anyone need to buy the second self-help book? Right? What they're failing in with their book, it's true, look, what they're failing with their book, and that's why there will never be a sequel to Shitnosis, helping you get over the shit in your life. Because I looked at it, why do self-help books normally fail? Well, the key thing is because people, as good as the contents may be, people don't tend to put into action what's on the page. Now, that could be because they learn better visually. Well, we've overcome that. We have the tons of them things, QR codes, so that people can then be guided through visually and audibly. So whatever their preferred learning style, it's all covered in Shitnosis. We also then have to accept that some people are very emotional, spiritual type people, whereas on the flip side, some people are very analytical people. So instead of saying here's a one-size-fits-all approach, which some books do, which is why they won't work for everyone, I cover in here, right, here's the analytical approach if you're that kind of person. Here's the approach, important seeming process for more emotional people. So that
That's
you can
smart,
feel good about, you choose, you're starting to take control by the way you read and decide to use the contents of the book. You're, by having that control from the beginning, oh yeah, that sounds more like me, I'll use that. That means you will believe in it more and expect it to work more. So therefore, it becomes a more powerful placebo trigger for you, and also a better distraction for the analytical, critical faculty, which means it's more likely to have the positive outcome that you desired.
Oh, shit. So yeah, I mean, not having to redo it. Like, I mean, so if you're doing any sort of, you know, not self-help or whatever to make someone in a better place they are now. I mean, you're not having to do it multiple times. You know, that's why you can, you know, charge the 500 and just, you know, one time, and you're not setting it up with a sales funnel approach.
No, exactly. In fact, quite the opposite. When people contact me and say, I want a session with you, the first thing that they get is an email that says to them, before you ever even consider spending 500 bucks minimum with me, I suggest you go to Amazon and buy a copy of Shitnosis. It will cost you $17. And as long as you truly are ready to change, everything you need is in this book. And it genuinely is, because the only difference is, because of the QR codes, the interactive stuff, if people come to me in person or book a Zoom session where I would charge a minimum of $500 an hour, what I would ultimately do with them is no different than what's in this book. This genuinely is the techniques I've used over the past 3 decades with clients. They just need to realize that I am telling them the truth, that there is no difference. So, you know, yes, the only difference might be that if they're called Dave, every now and again during the session, I'm going to call them by their name. Whereas with the virtual videos, talking them through it, I don't know the name of the person who's going to be watching the video. So the video just says, hey, you know, if you're watching this, it's because you've got Shitnosis, the book, and now you're looking at the technique for anxiety or whatever. Do this with me, do that. That's the only difference. If they were in the room with me, I'd say their name now and again. But the actual techniques I used are no different. So I'm really charging for my time, not the treatment. I'd sooner they can get the same treatment outcome by just getting the book for $17. And I'd much sooner they did that and then go and spend the other $483 on celebrating with their family and friends the start of their wonderful new life, where they've said goodbye to that used to bother them in the past.
I like that a lot. Okay, so where's everyone gonna find you? How, I mean, they're gonna obviously go out and buy Shitnosis on Amazon.
It's dead simple. Just buy Shitnosis. If you know, that will help every human being on the planet. The best 17 books you'll ever spend. If you, however, want to learn to become a clinically trained, clinically qualified, accredited hypnotherapist, mind therapist, call it what you will, because they're just different titles for using these techniques, then you can earn 26 different world-class accredited diplomas as part of the Elite Hypnosis Bootcamp training package that you can find at ultimatehypnosiscourse.com, which is also where at the top of the page is that free 4-hour video I talked about earlier. And on every social media platform, with the exception of YouTube, where my channel is The Celebrity Hypnotist, it's at Royle, R-O-Y-L-E, Hypnotist, at Royle Hypnotist on Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, LinkedIn, all of them. So yeah, dead easy to find. And my career resume, if people want to go and have a look and search out those videos I alluded to, my documentary, the TV show where I got people to do things they say can't be done and whatnot, is all located at Magical Guru, which is MAGICALGURU.co.uk.
Guru.co.uk. Okay, excellent. Yeah, so you guys, that's plenty. There's where you need to go. That's what you need to get a hold of. That's what you should be doing. Just stop. Just stop what you're doing right now. Just stop and just go. Just get right to it. And Jonathan Royle, thank you so much for coming on. I enjoyed getting.
Thank you for having me, Rusty.
Yeah, I mean, talk with you.
I think I can sum it up. One final sentence from me is, if people keep doing what they've always done, they'll keep getting what they've always got. So if you want a different life, whatever that means to you right now, whether it's overcoming a habit, addiction, fear, or phobia, just being more positive, achieving more, whatever is right for you, then you need to do something differently. You need to take action. You need to change something, which is why, you know, self-help stuff is often called change work, because the key is to change something, do things differently. Start today, little and often. Repetition, little and often, repeated, long-term persistence will always bring bigger rewards than short-term bursts of enthusiasm that wear off.
Exactly. Yeah. Get on it. Get that pattern interrupted and just start, and then you can get right into it and get on your best self. So thank you everybody over there in the studio audience, and everyone listening wherever you are. And yeah, that is the show, man.